In the bustling streets of ancient Athens, a peculiar man walked barefoot, asking questions that seemed almost childlike in their simplicity. Yet, this man, considered by the Oracle of Delphi to be the wisest of all, claimed to know nothing. Since the dawn of civilization, humanity has equated power with the loudest voice, the sharpest wit, the most immediate answer. But what if true mastery lies not in displaying your intelligence, but in concealing it? What if the most dangerous weapon in your psychological arsenal is not what you reveal, but what you choose to hide? Socrates understood something that escapes most people trapped in the performance of modern life. We live in a theater of egos. Every conversation becomes a competition. Every interaction, a chance to prove our worth. We interrupt to showcase our knowledge. We correct to demonstrate our superiority. We speak before we listen, argue before we understand. This desperate need to be recognized as intelligent has made us predictable, vulnerable, and, paradoxically, foolish. Nietzsche would later call this the disease of the last man, someone so consumed with being seen as valuable that they lose all actual value. Today, we descend into one of philosophy's most counterintuitive strategies: the Socratic method of appearing ignorant while maintaining complete control. This is not about dumbing yourself down, it's about weaponizing curiosity, disarming opposition through questions, and achieving victory without your opponent ever realizing they've lost. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why the most intelligent people in any room are often the quietest, why CEOs hire consultants who ask questions rather than give answers, and why Socrates, who claimed to know nothing, remains more influential than every scholar who claimed to know everything. This is the art of intellectual invisibility, and once you master it, you'll never see human interaction the same way again. The mask of ignorance grants you omniscience. When you pretend not to know, people reveal everything. The fool who asks questions learns more than the genius who provides answers. Socrates developed what we now call Socratic irony, the practice of claiming ignorance to expose the ignorance of others. But why does this work? The answer lies in the fundamental architecture of human ego. Carl Jung identified the shadow self, those parts of our psyche we refuse to acknowledge. When someone presents themselves as all-knowing, our defenses activate. We become guarded, competitive, closed. But when someone appears genuinely curious, even naive, we drop our shields. We want to teach. We want to demonstrate our superiority. And in doing so, we expose our assumptions, our weaknesses, our true motivations. Schopenhauer wrote that all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as self-evident. The person pretending ignorance accelerates this process. They allow others to ridicule them, to oppose them, until the truth becomes undeniable through the other person's own words. Consider the trial of Socrates himself, history's most profound example of this principle in action. Accused of corrupting Athenian youth and introducing false gods, Socrates stood before a jury of 501 citizens. His accusers, Meletus, Anytus, and Lycon, believed they had trapped the old philosopher. They expected him to beg, to grovel, to employ the rhetoric common in Athenian courts. Instead, Socrates began questioning Meletus with childlike simplicity. "You say I corrupt the youth, but tell me, who improves them?" Meletus confidently replied that the laws, the jury, the assembly, basically everyone except Socrates, improved the youth. Socrates continued innocently. "So you're saying that I alone harm them, while every other Athenian helps them? That's remarkable. With horses, isn't it true that only a few skilled trainers improve them, while most people would harm them through ignorance? The trap was set through questions, not statements." Meletus stammered. The audience saw the contradiction, but Socrates wasn't finished. He asked, "Tell me, is it better to live among good citizens or bad ones?" Meletus agreed it was better to live among good people. "Then," Socrates continued with feigned confusion, "would I intentionally corrupt those around me, knowing it would make my own life worse? Either I don't corrupt the youth, or I do so unwittingly, in which case You should educate me, not prosecute me. Through appearing ignorant, through asking rather than declaring, Socrates exposed the hollowness of the charges against him. He lost the legal battle, Athens executed him with hemlock, but won the war of ideas that echoes through millennia. His accusers are remembered only as footnotes to his legend. This principle dominates modern power dynamics, though few recognize it. In Silicon Valley boardrooms, the most effective leaders are those who ask, "Help me understand," rather than dictate solutions. They create psychological safety that makes people reveal their true thinking, their fears, their hidden agendas, their actual capabilities. Watch a skilled detective interrogate a suspect. They never accuse directly. They say, "I'm confused. Can you walk me through this one more time?" Each retelling reveals new contradictions, new vulnerabilities. The suspect, believing themselves smarter than the confused detective, talks themselves into a confession. On social media, the influencers who ask questions generate more engagement than those who make proclamations. "Am I wrong about this?" invites dialogue. "Here's what you need to know," invites resistance. First, in your next disagreement, replace every statement with a question. Instead of, "That strategy won't work," ask, "What happens if the market shifts?" Watch as the other person argues themselves out of their position, believing it was their own realization. Second, when someone attacks your idea, respond with genuine curiosity. "That's interesting. What makes you say that?" This diffuses hostility and forces them to defend a position they may not have fully considered. Often they'll modify their stance mid-explanation, saving you the effort of arguing. We've established the foundational paradox. Ignorance, when performed correctly, becomes the highest form of intelligence. You've learned that questions are more powerful than answers, that curiosity disarms where assertion alienates. By concealing your knowledge, you gain access to everyone else's. The fool has become the philosopher. But here's what most people miss, and why they fail when they try to apply Socratic wisdom. They ask questions insincerely. Their tone betrays condescension. People sense the manipulation and close off even faster than before. The art of pretending to be stupid only works when it transcends pretending. If this resonates with you, if you're beginning to see conversations differently, then follow the white rabbit deeper. Subscribe to this channel because what we explore here isn't available in your social media feed or your self-help books. Comment below with your own experiences. When has asking questions revealed more than making statements? Let's build a community of those who understand that wisdom whispers while foolishness shouts. What we've covered so far is defensive, protecting yourself from exposure, learning through others' revelations. But the true masters of Socratic wisdom don't just gather information. They shape reality through carefully constructed ignorance. The next law ventures into territory that made Socrates dangerous enough to execute. We're moving from passive learning to active manipulation, from asking questions to engineering the questions that others ask themselves. This is where philosophy becomes psychological warfare. Are you ready to see how deep the rabbit hole goes? Destroy certainty, and you control the mind. The person who appears certain is predictable. The person who appears uncertain is uncontrollable. By embodying doubt, you become the chaos that others desperately try to organize. And in organizing you, they reveal their entire strategic framework. Søren Kierkegaard wrote extensively about anxiety as the dizziness of freedom, that vertiginous feeling when confronted with infinite possibility. Human beings crave certainty because the brain is a prediction machine. We're constantly modeling the future, calculating probabilities, reducing chaos to manageable patterns. When someone appears utterly certain, when they project absolute confidence, our brain can model them. We know what they'll do, so we know how to counter them. But when someone seems genuinely uncertain, genuinely confused, genuinely exploring, the prediction engine fails. And here's the crucial insight from neuroscience. When the brain can't predict, it enters a heightened state of attention. Mirror neurons activate more intensely. We become obsessed with understanding this unpredictable element. Dostoevsky explored this in Notes from Underground. where his protagonist's inconsistency makes him more memorable, more influential than any of the confident rationalists around him. The underground man understood that twice 2 makes 4 is not life, gentlemen. It is the beginning of death. Julius Caesar, history remembers as the brilliant general who crossed the Rubicon and transformed Rome from republic to empire. But before that decisive moment, Caesar was a master of strategic uncertainty, particularly in his relationship with the Roman Senate. In 60 BCE, Caesar returned from his governorship in Spain with enough military achievements to demand a triumph, a massive public celebration. He also wanted to run for consul. Roman law required candidates to enter the city as private citizens, but triumph protocol required staying outside city walls until the celebration. Caesar faced a choice: triumph or consulship. The Senate, led by Cato the Younger and threatened by Caesar's rising power, saw an opportunity. They refused to bend the rules, believing Caesar's ego would choose the triumph, giving them a year to consolidate power against him. They were certain of his choice. Caesar did neither, and both. He approached the Senate with what seemed like genuine uncertainty. He sent letters asking for advice, appearing torn, even weak. "I defer to your wisdom," he wrote. "What would you do in my position?" This apparent indecision frustrated his enemies, but also intrigued them. Cato and his allies spent weeks debating what Caesar would choose, revealing their entire strategic approach in Senate discussions that Caesar's spies eagerly reported. Then, Caesar did the unthinkable. He surrendered his right to the triumph and entered Rome as a private citizen to run for consul. But his apparent weakness had been an information-gathering operation. He now knew exactly which senators would oppose him, exactly what legal strategies they'd employ, exactly how they'd try to limit his power as consul. He won the election overwhelmingly and formed the first triumvirate with Pompey and Crassus, a political alliance his enemies never predicted because they'd been too busy planning for outcomes they felt certain about. Caesar's feigned uncertainty made his opponents explain their entire playbook. 10 years later, when he crossed the Rubicon, they had no playbook left. He'd already seen all their moves. This principle thrives in modern negotiation. FBI hostage negotiators are trained to use tactical empathy. Phrases like, "it seems like," or "I could be wrong, but..." These expressions of uncertainty don't weaken their position. They strengthen it. The hostage-taker, encountering someone who doesn't claim to have all the answers, begins problem-solving out loud. "Well, actually, what I really need is..." They volunteer information they'd never reveal to someone projecting absolute authority. In business, Steve Jobs famously used this in early Apple board meetings. He'd present an idea, tentatively. "I'm not sure if this is crazy, but what if we..." Making board members invest in refining the concept. They'd add suggestions, feel ownership, support the final product. Jobs appeared collaborative while maintaining complete control of the outcome. Even in intimate relationships, the partner who admits uncertainty, "I don't know if I'm seeing this clearly. Help me understand your perspective," creates space for honest dialogue. The partner who's always certain creates only resentment. First, before your next important meeting or negotiation, identify one aspect where you can genuinely express uncertainty. Not about core values or bottom lines, but about methodology or perspective. "I've been struggling with how to approach this. I'd value your input." Watch how people reveal their priorities and concerns when given permission to guide someone they perceive as genuinely uncertain. Second, when someone challenges you, resist the reflex to immediately defend. Instead, pause and say, "You might be right, I hadn't considered that angle." This doesn't concede your position. It creates a moment where their guard drops. In that moment, they'll often reveal the real reason for their objection, which is rarely the one they stated initially. Now you can address the actual concern rather than fighting a proxy war. The Oracle of Delphi declared Socrates the wisest man in Athens, not despite his claim of ignorance, but because of it. "I know that I know nothing," he said, and in that admission lay absolute freedom. Freedom from the burden of defending certainty. Freedom from the trap of ego. Freedom to learn, to adapt, to evolve, while others remained imprisoned by their need to appear knowledgeable. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his Meditations, observed, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." The Socratic method is simply living this wisdom, approaching life as an eternal student rather than a finished expert. In our age of social media performance, of personal branding, of constant self-promotion, the art of strategic ignorance has never been more powerful or more necessary. While everyone else shouts their expertise into the void, you can ask questions and actually learn. While others exhaust themselves maintaining the illusion of omniscience, you can embrace the liberation of genuine curiosity. Van Gogh wrote to his brother Theo, "I am always doing what I cannot do yet in order to learn how to do it." This is the essence of Socratic wisdom, perpetual becoming rather than static being. The white rabbit leads not to answers, but to better questions, and better questions lead to transformed lives. Share this knowledge with someone trapped in the performance of certainty. Subscribe if you're ready to follow the rabbit deeper into the philosophical foundations of psychological mastery. The journey has only just begun, and the wisest among you know that it never truly ends. As Socrates faced his execution, drinking the hemlock that Athens demanded, his final words were not a grand statement, but a mundane request. "Crito, we owe a rooster to Asclepius. Please don't forget to pay the debt." Even in death, appearing concerned with the trivial while embodying the eternal. The ultimate act of seeming stupid while being supremely wise. Follow the white rabbit. Question everything. Especially, perhaps especially, your own certainty.